Hey folks, this is Susie Lee from Lina Boutique bringing you a series on Essential Stencils Spring Bundle for rub-on, transfers, and stencils. Let's do a little bottle art. Come on in, guys. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to work on a bottle today. I haven't done a bottle in a long time. I got this one. I play the jug. Just like Granny, right? What we're going to be doing is this bottle. This was a bottle of Merlot that we got from our son-in-law, I believe, at the holidays, a couple of holidays ago. We finally got it killed off. I do use it in my spaghetti sauce, just so you know. I didn't drink all this, but I did a little bit. A little sip for you, a little sip for the sauce. Anyway, I am going to put some molds on this. We are going to make some pretty teal color on the top. We're going to mold the bottom. We're going to do a little stenciling. I'm going to use some essential stencils and essential stencil rub-on transfers, the butterflies, preferably. Okay, let's get this show on the road. I'm going to be using this IOD Acanthus leaf mold. I'm going to be using the Essential Stencil here and the rub-on transfers, the butterflies. Let's get started. First things first, I'm going to be using some Fusion Mineral Paint in raw silk color, and I'm going to make a mixture of blues for a pretty teal on top. The bottle has already been cleaned with rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and so that all of the grease or fingerprints or whatever will be removed, and it will help the paint to adhere to the bottle. Well, I'm going to put 2 coats on for starters. And I did decide to go all the way to the top of the neck because I'm going to put the blue, part of the blue is going to be on the top half, and the bottom half will remain the creamy, dreamy white, as I call it, and we'll have the stencil on it. So just finishing up the top half and giving a quick dry before I go in and put on the second coat. And because it's Fusion Mineral Paint, I only have to put on 2 coats. So that's a bonus, right? Okay, here we are with the second coat on and dried. We're going to set it aside and we're going to work on the castings that I made with the IOD mold. I made some for the trim around the neck of the bottle and some that's going to separate the top from the bottom of the bottle. These are called Acanthus, and it's a leaf that is going to be pointed upward from the center shell part. Now the 2 colors I mixed was Sea Breeze and a Waverly chalk paint called Pool Blue, and it came up with this really beautiful turquoise color that I love. And I'm going to dirty it up in the end a little bit with some wax, but it is a gorgeous blue, wouldn't you agree? So I'm going in just with a kind of a dense brush, getting into all the nooks and crannies. That's real important. And there's about 1/8 of an inch high that you want to get around all the sides of it as well, so that you don't see any of the white Formflex compound showing. And that is what I made it with, Formflex compound. You can go to formflexcompound.com and get yours there. It's a wonderful product that I recommend highly, actually, and I use it often, so go check it out. Okay, just finishing up this last part, and then, of course, we'll have to dry it up a little bit. But the good news is I only had to put on 1 coat of that. And I made enough of it so that I could actually paint the top of the bottle once I got the castings applied to the bottle. Okay, castings are dry. We're going to set those aside, and we are going to get out our Essential Stencil. It's made for a round. It's supposed to say welcome on it, but we are going to only use the bottom part. It's a beautiful flourish with some butterflies in it, and we are going to use that and tape it with some painter's tape. It went all the way around this big fat bottle, almost completely, all but about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to tape it on securely with some painter's tape. And I'm going to be going in with some Pent Art wax paste in a black. It is not really black on the bottle. It turns out more of a grayish color, but what I did like about it was all the different tones and values of the gray that came out, and you'll see that in the end here. So what I do is I just grab a little bit up on my Essential stencil brush, which I highly recommend as well. If you've never used Essential stencil brushes or any of their paint brushes, you're missing out. It's a wonderful product, and I recommend them highly as well. And I am an affiliate with them, so I will link my affiliate link in the description of this video. So once I get it all completely covered, and you can see I'm not making it all the same tone. Some are dark, some is a little bit lighter, but once it's released from the back, poof, it kind of just pops off, and you can see all the beautiful stencil artwork on there. And it is artwork, but I'll tell you what, it's easy artwork. It really is. So I do dry this up a little bit, and unfortunately you'll see later that I did get a little bit on the bottle that I had to fix. But what you're seeing here is my Titebond Quick and Thick. I like to use Titebond Quick and Thick when I'm applying castings. It's a great product as well. I go ahead and apply it evenly and get it ready, because I like to let it just sit for a minute, not too long, just a minute, because that way you don't have to hold it on there so long. It grabs quicker when it has about a minute to sit on the casting. So okay, I'm going to position my first one and get it on there. Just kind of push it on with your hand lightly. Now these castings have been made, only a couple of hours prior to this. The trim castings had been made days before, but the rest of them were only made a couple of hours prior to this. You just put the casting in the mold, put it in the freezer for 20 minutes, and pop it right out. Let it dry, air dry for a couple of hours, and it's really ready to go. It's not completely cured, but it is able to be painted and applied at that point. So here what I'm doing is I am taking the trim mold that's going to go around the neck, and I'm just kind of measuring it out, and I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to cut it with a scissor. Now where you make that cut mark, you might have to touch up a little bit with paint, because it will be white at the seam, but as soon as you touch it up with the paint, it'll disappear for you. Also, if you're not on a timed live like I was, you can take a little tiny piece of painter's tape and tape it on there and let it hold for as long as it takes to secure onto your bottle. And you can also use a little dot of hot glue if need be. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. I used a little hot glue on each end, just a dab of it, so that it would set up quickly and then hold it in place for me, as opposed to taping it with the painter's tape and waiting so I could move on to the next step. So I'm just pinching it, holding it on there until it starts to feel secure, and I can let it go and move on. Now, the wonderful thing about FormFlex is that it is flexible even after it dries completely. However, once it dries, you might, on a cold day like it was for me, want to just hit it with a little heat tool or hair dryer and just heat it up so that it'll bend a little easier if it's going around a small area like the neck of this bottle. So I'm just putting on some of the Tight Bond Quick and Thick, and I am going to secure it on each end with just a little dab of hot glue so that it'll set up quickly and the Tight Bond Quick and Thick will have an opportunity to set up. And it sets up very quickly in just a few minutes. It's great for this kind of crafting as well as wood crafts and such. Comes out white, dries clear. Love that. Okay, she's ready for some paint. We're going to take what's left of that beautiful, gorgeous teal blue paint that we mixed up, and I'm going to just go right in there and start painting the cream color to match the molds. And we are going to go all the way in to every crack and crevice around the back as closely as I can with that bigger brush. And I do eventually have to transfer over to a little smaller detail brush because what I end up doing is meeting the paint along the very edge of that flourish. And it's so tiny and thin, you don't want to cover up all that hard work we did. So I'm just going to get a small detail brush and go right in there and cover up the seams at the top of the neck. Like I said, there's a little white spot, and we're going to cover those seams up. And then I'm going in with the detail brush very lightly over the top of the flourishes where it meets. And I know I said this before, but isn't this a gorgeous blue? It's the perfect blue for what I'm going to try to achieve once I dirty it up with a little of the bare dark wax. And it just gives it a great vintage patina. And now that I've successfully met north and south, we're going to just dry it up real quick and bring on the dark wax. Here's a little piece of ribbon I'm going to add at the end. I'm just showing you. We're going to dirty that up as well. Everything has to be vintage. And this took a hot minute to dry because I wanted to make sure everything was completely dry. Because if you try to put on the dark wax over wet paint, it just gets all muddy and you just lose the effect you're trying to achieve. So make sure your paint is very, very dry when you go to wax it. Now here I'm picking out my stencil brush that I'm going to be using. And I'm getting my bare dark wax, just putting a little bit of it into the brush on top of the lid, and I'm going right in and dabbling it on there, but I'm going to take a little baby wipe and I'm going to wipe it back. I'm going to work in sections and you're going to see it come to life real quick. It's wax on, wax off, Danielson. But the vintage effect that this dark wax gives it is just so pretty. This is just the first coat. I go in with a second coat, and in the end, it looks very old, and all of the dark wax in all those nooks and crannies gives it that yummy vintage look. Now that the bottle's turned, you can see on that first coat how it's starting to take effect. Just dirtying it up a little bit, but really wiping it back, especially on the flat surfaces. I want the majority of that vintage vibe on the castings. And now you're going to see me go in sideways with that brush, adding a little bit more of the dark wax in the nooks and crannies, not so much on the flat parts, but just giving it a second coat and then letting the dark wax go into the edges and wiping back the tops. Now it's time for the butterfly transfers from the Spring 2025 Bundle Transfer Kit from Essential Stencil. I'm going to pick out butterflies here that are about the same size as the stencil that I put on. So some of them might be slightly smaller and the stencil will poke out from behind, and that's kind of a nice shadowing effect. But In the end, I looked at this and said, it's just too pristine on the bottom. So I took what was left in my brush and I just went over the bottom of the bottle as well and added a little bit of dirtying up of the wax to the bottle as well. I think it looks so much better with that. Okay, so what you do is you lay your bottle down flat and you pick out your transfer. I had picked out this really pretty big one to put front and center because it had some beautiful teals in it and it just matched the whole vibe of the bottle. And so what you do is you just lay it down after you peel off the white backing. You take your little burnishing tool that comes in all of the kits that are transfers, and you just get to scraping. You just scrape, scrape, scrape across your surface. And as you start to pull it up slowly, you may see some of it did not release. And so if that happens, you just lay it back down and you just keep rubbing and rubbing until it starts to release. And it will eventually. It looks like you're an artist with this because it's painted, and when the paint releases, it looks like you have just completed a beautiful painting. It just makes your art pieces sing. Okay, slowing this down for a little reveal. Beautiful. I continue to select the butterflies that I feel fit the pattern the best, and I just cut them off and apply them in the exact same way you saw me do the center one. And here's where I get to add a little bit of color to the piece other than the cream and the green. The little bit of pink and corals that are in these butterflies is absolutely stunning. And that went right in the back and the middle, and it had a little rose attached to it. So beautiful. Roses are ageless and timeless, very vintage. Okay, so I continue to go and show you the different ones I'm going to pick out to cut out. And I do some of it off camera so that it doesn't become monotonous to watch. But I grabbed some of my SS20 Aurora Borealis crystals. They're flat back, and I put them on with a little bit of E6000, running low on the B7000, so I had to do it the old-fashioned way and just put it out on a plate and put it on with one of my skewers. But just a little bit of shimmer here and there makes a piece stand out, in my opinion, and just gives it a little bit of upgrade, a little bit of interest and class, something to draw the eye into it. And that's it, folks. I just added a few more of those beautiful butterfly transfers and a couple more of those flatback crystals. And wow, isn't she just beautiful? Absolutely love how this one turned out. It's all that I thought it would be and then some. I hope this inspires you to think out of the box and see what you can do with your old wine bottles, glass bottles, and surfaces. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. And stay tuned for part 3 of the Essential Stencil Spring Bundle series.